Hi, welcome to City at a Glance. My name is David Young, and here on City at a Glance, we discuss topics that are of great interest to residents here in Fort Collins. Today, we'll be discussing our journey to world class, which is our continual journey to try to provide the best possible service to residents here in Fort Collins. In order to do this, we're using the Baldrige criteria, which is a national standard for performance excellence. We'll be discussing this in more in depth in today's show. Joining us, as always, is our City Manager, Darren Atterbury. Darren, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, David.
And also with us is our Performance and Excellence Manager, Terry Runyon. Terry, Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And Kim Griffiths is the Executive Director with the Rocky Mountain for Performance Excellence. Kim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So to kick things off, I'll just ask Darren. Darren, can you kind of discuss a little bit about our journey to world class and how that kind of came to be and where that originated to begin with?
Yeah, that's a big question, David. And
Yeah.
I know we only have a half hour for the show, so I'll try and be real brief. And I want to just say to Kim and Terry, I'm really glad you're here. I appreciate it. You both have been such a huge part of our journey, and it is exactly that. It's a journey. There's not a destination. We're not going to reach world class and say we finally arrived. I think that what I think resonates so much about the idea of world-class municipal services is that this community, that's what this community has come to expect. And I think for my coworkers, you and I and Terry and 2,400 other folks, it's not only what the residents expect, it's what they deserve. And so if you have the mindset of that mindset, I think it's very easy to be focused on continually improving and always getting better. And so I think that's what the journey is about. I think it's serving this community in a way that they deserve. I think that the people that we hire in this organization to be team members, it's people who want to be on the best and brightest team. They're very dedicated. They're very competent. And so this idea of world-class municipal services is not a foreign concept. And so, just real quickly, David, I have a kind of a personal story where when I was appointed as the city manager, it was very clear to me that council wanted this city organization to strive for innovation and to continually get better. Again, this continuous improvement model. And right about that time, I'm not kidding you. I was in the middle of the night, I was thinking about all the major initiatives that we had going on in the city, and I can rattle off a lot of those: new budgeting system, new dashboard, performance metric system, new performance-based pay system, on and on and on. And the fear that I had, not kidding you, in the middle of the night was I was the only one that knew about all those individual systems. Many owners of those systems, but they were really, I don't want to say they didn't really link together. They weren't really aligned. Mm-hmm. And so for me, really, we needed to start talking about how all these systems ultimately complement each other and how they're aligned. And if they're not aligned, what do we do about that? Do we eliminate them? Do we modify them? And so I won't get too deep in this other than saying this idea of an organization, again, the city was not going from here to here. The city was really desiring to go from here to here. And I think we needed a more systematic approach to that. Mm-hmm. And so that's, for me, that's where it kind of began. We had a mayor and city council who really wanted city organization to get better. We were all wanting that as a city organization as well. We weren't at the bottom of the barrel. We're a high performing organization. But how do we keep getting better? And so what I'm mostly excited about, Terry and Kim, is to really share with the community of Fort Collins a little bit about that journey. And again, the two of you, Terry, you've been a great partner in this. I am so thankful for the skills that you've brought and the passion, and I think people will get a feel for that, your personal commitment to performance excellence, and then Kim in your role as the REMPEX executive director, and the system that I talked about. We looked around at a lot of different initiatives, if you will, and what really fit for us was the Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence Program. And we are on a never-ending journey, and I can honestly say at the beginning of the show here that we are so better as a city organization. And I think that I can point to many direct benefits to the services that we provide to our citizens. So with that, I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks for the topic.
And if I could chime in on the world-class piece, I remember, and it was probably 3 years ago, and you were very much about how do we define world-class, and departments across the organization were how do we define world-class, and so the assignment was just define it, have conversations with your team, and define what you think world-class is, and that was such a great exercise, and that is what I think catapulted teams and departments to say, yeah, this is good, this is, where are we and where do we want to be? So that was a really good exercise too.
So imagine being on a team. Say in the water quality lab, or in streets department, or in police investigations, or transport, or purchasing, or wherever in the city organization, and said, what does world class look like in your particular industry? And then once you've ID'd what it looks like, how do we get there? And then how do we not just sort of trust us, we're there, but how do we prove and document and continually get better? So I think that early on in the conversation about world class, people said, well, what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean Venice or your favorite American city or somewhere in Europe. It's actually at the individual sort of crew level, team level, department, service area director, and overall city. What does that look like? And the great thing for the city, the departments and the teams is that they got to be a part of defining what that looks like in their particular industry.
So
yeah, Kim.
I just want to jump in too. There's a lot of organizations that claim to be world class. I mean, it's almost a ubiquitous label for organizations, but very few strive to prove it. So you can say you're world class, you can say you have the best customer service, but the rubber hits the road when you attempt to prove it. And while no business model can absolutely with certainty prove that you're world class, the aspirational goals of the city of Fort Collins to win the only presidential award for excellence and quality in the country sets it apart. It's just very, striving for it puts you in a league that's different from other organizations, whether they be cities or other types of companies, schools, hospitals, all the things that encompass this performance excellence framework.
Definitely. And last year, the City of Fort Collins actually achieved the peak level, or the peak award.
Yes.
Can you kind of elaborate a bit more on what that entails and what that means for the City of Fort Collins?
Sure. The peak award is our highest level of performance at the state level. So it is based on the Baldrige criteria, which is this national criteria for performance excellence. As I said, the only presidential level quality award in the country. And City of Fort Collins is only the 5th organization in the entire state of Colorado, and now that we expanded to the Rocky Mountain region, to have attained this peak level award. So what we do is we use a set of criteria that's published nationally, and we measure the city's performance against that criteria. We send in a group of examiners that take a look at all the facets of the organization, how they run their business. And then we have a panel of judges who determine whether or not they've hit that benchmark for quality. It doesn't mean that they're perfect. It's not to strive for excellence and perfection, because that's unattainable. But what it does mean is that in each and every organizational place that can possibly be improved, the City of Fort Collins is trying to improve it. So that's what we strive for, that's what we measure, and that's what we see in City of Fort Collins and how they've set up their framework for excellence.
And David, if I can say, and we've said this from day one, this isn't about acquiring a plaque or an award. This is about a deep, genuine commitment to getting better. And this REMPAX and Baldrige criteria works best for our organization. In fact, early in our journey, I would have coworkers or even people out in the community that say, well, why would you pick Baldrige? And my response was, we looked around. We looked at all different kinds of systems. We chose Baldrige for many reasons, But if you have a better system, we'd love to hear that, because this is not about a plaque. This is, as I said, about a journey. And I think that, it's been wonderful because it gives us common language. This idea, and I just, for our viewers, it may look pretty easy to run a city, but this city we have 2,400 employees, we have 155,000 citizens, we have every 2 years $1 billion budget, and several $1 billion in assets, and very complex systems and very diverse businesses. So if you think about the city of Fort Collins like you would maybe a normal corporate structure, we have our board president and our board of directors, which in our case is the mayor and city council. And then as city manager, I'm the chief executive officer. And then we have, my cabinet or executive leadership team, and then the various structures. But as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at water quality or transit or police or legal or, just the diversity of businesses, we don't want to just leave that up to chance. I think if you're really, really lucky in this size of an organization, you'll be pretty good. But I think to get too great in a sustainable way, decade after decade after decade, you've got to focus on the systems as well. And I think that that's what this has really helped us do. So. Right. And we'll probably talk about examples of what those things are in a minute.
Yeah, in fact, that's kind of what I wanted to ask Terry. Terry's been the one who's been the driving force behind this for the city, and really has, you're kind of have the finger on the pulse, if you will. So
somewhat. Yeah.
Could you provide maybe some specific examples for viewers in terms of what this looks like in practicality for the city?
Yeah, absolutely. I think. I'm thinking like the BFO process, for example. That was a process that started before, and that kind of catapulted that, wow, this is a great system, and this is one of those cross-functional kind of systems that we have in place.
David, BFO is budgeting for outcomes.
Oh,
thank you, David.
Thank you. Do I need to? Oh, yeah, I can't throw out acronyms. Thank you. Budgeting for outcomes. So I think along with that were the measurements. And how do we measure? And I think you mentioned that earlier about how do we know that we're world class? Right. And so I remember Lawrence Pollock, who is our budgeting for outcomes manager, when we had our first examination, and they talked about measurement, and that was one of our opportunities for improvement. And so that has really come along from the last 4 years, I would say, that how we measure. I mean, we have a community dashboard now that we did not have before. We're also going to have a budgeting for outcomes scorecard, where we're going to be measuring all of the scorecard initiatives. So that's again, based on what we heard from feedback from our examiners that came in. Our strategic planning process is much different than it was 4 years ago. And so Darren and his team, started. I remember the first year and started working on a certain program, and we have probably our third iteration of strategic planning that is much better, and it gets better every time. So that's what this has helped us do, is say, gosh, we thought we were good here, and now we've done it again, and we learn from that, because we always look back at that year and say, how did we do? And then we improve it. So all those key systems have been improved. So those are just some examples.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kim.
I heard an interesting statistic recently. 92% of data, those things that come into your organization, are what is referred to in most organizations as dark data. It comes in, it's stored somewhere, it's never really utilized, mined, analyzed to get better. And what City of Fort Collins has done is turn that on its head and say, we've got lots of data coming in, we want this transparency with our constituents, but let's use it to understand what our constituents want and need and improve that service. So that is just one example of what, and Darren talked about this alignment and this information and data knowledge and all that, and that's just one great example of what this framework sort of not forces you, but suggests that you do, and then you decide how you're going to do it and what works best for your particular city and organization.
Well, and that's what I like about the system that we're in. There's no right answer.
Right.
The real question is, are you deeply committed to getting better, and are you constantly evaluating your systems to get better? I love the idea of that dark data getting light shined on it and helping us ask better questions, ask smarter questions, so you can continue to improve. One other thing that I want to add to what Terry has said, this idea of a system that helps you evaluate what you've done. So we call it PDCA, Plan, Do, Check, Act. We plan something, we do it, and then what gets oftentimes lost in business and local government is this idea of checking what you did, revising it, and then coming back as you redo these systems over and over and over, getting better. So it's kind of basic, but it's just this continually trying to get better and better and asking the right questions and having structures in place that will help you do that. But I want to just exclamation point strategic planning, because that is not something
foundational,
that this city has done and in the past. And I think it has the potential to completely transform the way that we do our business.
Yeah.
Other areas are citizen engagement, the way we interact with what business would call customers, but our citizenry and various stakeholders around the community. How are we really engaging, and how are we really understanding what folks want? And then on the other side, our coworkers. The folks every day who come in, who are here 24/7 providing services. How do we make sure that we're engaging so that we're not just telling, we're actually having conversations about what they need from at all levels to help them get better at their businesses as well, and help us get better. And so there's a lot of really good examples, David, that maybe 8-10 years ago we were doing a pretty good job at.
Definitely. Well, let me ask the entire group as a whole, when the rubber meets the road for a resident out there, when they see, okay, you're making these changes, you're on this journey, you've instituted these, the strategic plan and whatnot, what does that mean for me? How does that actually benefit a resident here in Fort Collins who's watching this?
Why do I care?
Exactly.
That's
why do I care
we talk
question.
about that with staff as well. It's like, why do I care about this?
Yeah.
And do you want to take this?
Why don't you go and then
Okay, I can start.
backfill.
I think for us, it's having better systems in place, help us be a better run government that really benefits our citizens. And all the examples you just gave, the fact that we're engaging citizens more, we have a better planning mechanism, we have a better tracking system for all of our finances, we're more transparent, we're reaching out quite a bit more. So I think those things really help us get better, that really benefits them in the long run.
Definitely.
And I think that having rigor around your normal daily processes and having a way to evaluate those and plan, do, check, act on all of our actions, we are going to be more cost effective. We're going to be better at delivering the quality of service, the quantity of services, and then I think about as it relates to citizen engagement, for example, in important policy matters. The better we are at that, the more responsive we'll be to citizen interests. And sometimes just going out and doing a public meeting and saying, "Here's what we're going to do," that's not always the best way. So if we're really to answer your question more directly, I think we're making smarter decisions. I think that we're at least as a city staff, I think learning to make better recommendations, more informed recommendations to our elected officials, and then on an operational level, I actually think that we're just starting this now as we're in this 5. I don't, Terry, how many years we've been doing this,
It's been about 5.
But I think payoff is going to be 10, 15, 20, 35, 50 years out.
Yeah.
Because I think we're changing the course of how we do it. What I like to say is we're moving from a trust us local government to a data-driven, results-based local government. And I'll tell you, it's an opportunity to talk about past mayors and councils who've supported us in this journey. Without leadership at that level, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And so we're all trying to get better together.
Definitely. Kim, I wanted to give you a chance directly to respond to, there's some kind of misconceptions or myths out there surrounding this process. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit and maybe kind of set the record straight for?
Yes, I've been working with the criteria for 14 years now, as a volunteer, as a board member for Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, as the executive director. And I have some themes that recur all the time, and I hear them and I'd like to address them somewhat. First one is, the classic is, it's too difficult. It's too difficult to do this. The criteria is the gold standard worldwide for performance excellence. It is irrefutable that this is the criteria that not only American companies strive for performance excellence, but around the world, the Europeans, the Asian countries, they're all using some form of Baldrige. Maybe not the criteria as it's written exactly, but certainly some form of it, and they use it all the time. So it always is a little bit of a chuckle to me that the chief complaint is it's too difficult. In order to be a role model organization and to validate your performance excellence, you have to be a leader. And there are just so few organizations that have that leadership mindset. I mean, I want to unpack this a little bit for the audience. There are only 2 other cities in the country who have ever achieved a Baldrige Award. One is the city of Coral Springs in Florida, and the other is the city of Irving in Texas. So this is truly rarefied air to even strive for this level of performance excellence, number one. Number 2, there has never been a city in Rocky Mountain Performance Excellence, so that's the entire Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana region, who has ever been in the system and gotten to this level. And so, to be that type of role model leadership, yeah, it is difficult. It's not a walk in the park. It's not a plaque. So many organizations strive to be in some organization to get an award, and they say, well, gee, why don't I just pay my money and get my award? Well, it's just not like that. It's a verified standard of performance. The other thing that I hear a lot is it's too time-consuming. Once again, kind of tagging off it's too difficult. And yes, it is time-consuming because there's a lot of moving parts to integrate and bring together. Most organizations, just quite frankly, were never built to achieve performance excellence. They were built to deliver services or operations. Darren talked about it. They're typically siloed, which means each department might strive for their own version of excellence, but nobody knows what the overarching concept of excellence is, and they don't do a lot of interdepartmental communication. As a result, there might be pockets of excellence, flashes of glory, but not this overall performance improvement and excellence framework. So yes, it is time consuming, but I always sort of push back on that one and say, depends on where you're starting from. If you've got some good data systems in place, if you've got some leadership framework, if you start with that strategic plan and you start this thing rolling, I mean, look at what the city of Fort Collins has achieved in 5 relatively short years to get to this level of performance. It's an interesting set of myths, and frankly, it's just it is all those things, but the reward is such a payoff that you invest in it. And as Darren pointed out, there are other ways to run great organizations. It's not the only framework, but it is one that is verified and is accepted worldwide as the gold standard.
Definitely. Well, we're almost out of time today, but knowing that this is a never-ending journey, what are our next steps? Where are we going from here?
We are applying at the national level, so we achieved the highest level at state, and so now we are applying at national in actually May of 2015. So we're very excited about that. We're very excited to be in a national audience where we can have national feedback from folks who are very skilled like Kim is, and so we'll get that next fall and get our feedback report and continue to get better.
And that national level is Baldrige, right?
Malcolm Baldrige, national quality. Yep.
Well, Darren, anything?
What's next?
What's next? Keep on moving.
Terry looks a little tired, and I
Yeah.
look beat up. And it's
Thank you.
Because this isn't the easy path, and I have a lot of people that I talk to in Fort Collins and sometimes around the country about why Baldrige, and again there are other systems, and this isn't the easy path, and difficult, and time consuming, as you've said. I would just say that this large organization, I'm unapologetic about time spent on strategic planning and on systems of continuous improvement and on dashboards and transparency and engaged workforce and engaged stakeholders and community members. So I'm unapologetic about that. I think that that's, if you look at it as how do I answer the questions in Baldrige, that's time consuming. But if you look at it as a genuine commitment to getting better, then I think that, I hope that this community, I hope that this brings confidence to our citizens that this city organization is very serious about this. And there aren't a lot of cities in America that are, I think, striving at the level that we are. And so I'm really proud as a citizen of Fort Collins too that we get to do this. But it's hard and it's time consuming, but it's good work. And I think it's going to make us just continually get better. And again, I don't think, I know I don't, and I know you don't, and I know that the mayor and city council aren't thinking about the next 2 quarters. They're thinking about the next several decades. And I think that this is putting us in a really good position.
Definitely, definitely. Well, truly an exciting journey and one that, like Darren said, we're just getting started on. So stay tuned for more information on this, definitely. I would like to thank all our guests for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Pleasure.
Darren, as always, thank you. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And make sure to tune in next time for City at a Glance.